Hello and welcome to CECP's webinar, What Makes a Winning Excellence Awards Program. My name is Courtney Murphy and I serve as Manager of Strategic Engagement here at CECP. The goal of today's webinar is to support your organization in communicating the story of your philanthropic program and to put your best foot forward to the jurors in the Excellence Awards application. This slide outlines how we'd like to use our time today with you, the next slide that we're going to now, which shows our agenda. The emphasis will be on tips and advice taken directly from the selection committee members themselves on what they look for in the awards applications and how the standards of excellence in corporate giving are judged. We will also provide guidance on the process of completing your application and outline the steps and suggest a timeline for completion. And the application deadline is about 2 months away now, so the fall is creeping up on all of us as we get into September. But before we dive into that, I'd like to provide you with some context with a very brief history of CECP's Excellence Awards program and the benefits to winning companies and nonprofit organizations. Since 2000, the Excellence Awards in Corporate Philanthropy have been presented annually to companies demonstrating leadership in corporate giving. Since 2004, CECP has presented its annual Directors Award to a nonprofit demonstrating an exemplary partnership with a corporation. This will be the 12th annual Excellence Awards, and the recognition of these awards has grown in stature, and today is one of the most coveted awards in the field of corporate philanthropy. As you can see from this list on your screen of the past awards winners, this is on page 3 of the presentation, companies from a range of industries and geographies apply for and win the awards, representing a full range of nonprofit partners and program focus areas, which range from hunger to entrepreneurship to STEM education to economic empowerment, as well as many more focus areas. This photo on the next slide shows the winners that were recognized in June. From left to right, we have Charles Best, CEO and founder of DonorsChoose.org, nominated by Crate & Barrel, Jim Cornelius, chairman of Bristol-Myers Squibb Company, Lloyd Blankfein, who's CEO and chairman of the Goldman Sachs Group, and finally Doug Conant, CECP's chairman and former CEO of Campbell Soup Company. If you go to the Excellence Awards area of our website, you can read more about the programs for which each of these organizations was recognized and view video highlights describing their impact. This slide shows a screenshot of the homepage for the Excellence Awards on CECP's website. In order to get here, go to our website, which is corporatephilanthropy.org. Then you click on the Events tab in the top navigation, and then on the left navigation, you click the Excellence Awards. On this page, you can find information about past award winners, photos from past award events, application categories, and the applications themselves. This page also has a link to our selection committee, which we actually announced just today, our selection committee for the 12th Annual Excellence Awards. And our selection committee includes representatives from corporate, nonprofit, multilateral, investment, media, and academic communities, including Charles Best, Gene Case, representatives from Bristol-Myers Squibb, Intel, Goldman Sachs. We have the managing editor from the Stanford Social Innovation Review, and many more distinguished individuals who will be reviewing the applications. So we encourage you to visit that section of our website as well. Next year's winners will be celebrated in a special awards presentation at the Time Warner headquarters in New York on June 5th, 2012, which is the first day of CECP's annual Corporate Philanthropy Summit. Over 250 senior giving officers, CEOs, industry thought leaders, and media will attend the awards event. The winning corporate CEO or nonprofit CEO or executive director must be available to receive the award in person. But we'll discuss this in more detail when we get to the timeline for applying. Moving on to the benefits to applying for the Excellence Awards, the winning companies receive recognition in front of 250 leaders in the field of corporate philanthropy at our June summit. The winning nonprofit receives a grant of $25,000 from CECP's Board of Directors. CECP works closely with the communications teams at the winning organizations to secure press opportunities. Award winners have received media attention for their programs in a number of high-profile media outlets, including Bloomberg News, CNBC, Fast Company, The Economist, Forbes, and Fox Business, just to name a few. And additionally, the winning organizations are featured in a professional video shown at the event and on CECP's website, as well as our social media platforms. And each winner receives an engraved award as well. But what about the benefits to those who apply but may not win the award in a given year? There are definitely benefits for those companies and nonprofit organizations as well. First, the process of applying for the awards can be a productive exercise in communicating the goals and impact of your program for use in other materials. We've often heard that some companies reference the application and the standards of excellence as a guide when creating a new philanthropic program or partnership. And second, the selection committee takes great care in discussing and compiling feedback for each of the applicants. After the awards ceremony in June, each applicant has the opportunity to consult with CECP about areas where their program may be able to improve. And to our knowledge, CECP is the only award-granting organization in the industry to provide this feedback loop, and we consider it an important part of our larger advocacy mission. We encourage all applicants to take us up on this offer, even the winners. And also, by applying for the awards, CECP will be aware of your company's initiatives, and we are always looking for ways to feature these programs in our events, publications, and online materials, always with your consultation. There's a checkbox on the application asking if CECP can contact you to share qualitative information about your program if opportunities arise. We encourage you to check yes so that we can share your philanthropy stories either in the media or in features at CECP Summit or website or other outlets. In short, the more we know about your programs, the more our team can look for best ways to help you get recognition and to share those best practices with others. That said, we'll never share any information without your permission, and we never share any of the financial information on your program. Now I'm going to turn to Margaret Cody, Director of CECP. Margaret oversees the selection process for the Excellence Awards in Corporate Philanthropy. Margaret, would you like to begin by explaining the categories for the Excellence Awards?
Sure, and thanks, Courtney, and welcome everyone to the webinar. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. So in total, there are 3 Excellence Awards in a given year. One goes to a company whose annual revenues are $20 billion or higher. That's our Chairman's Award. The President's Award also goes to a corporation whose revenues are under the $20 billion threshold. And then we have our Director's Award, which recognizes a powerful partnership between a corporation and a nonprofit. It's the nonprofit who wins the award, but it's an application filled out jointly with a corporate nominator. So if you're a corporation on the line and you have a fantastic partnership with a nonprofit, we encourage you to work together with the team from that nonprofit to submit an application for the Director's Award. Many of you have indicated that you've already downloaded the award. Some of you haven't. The eligibility requirements for each of these awards is listed as one of the very first things you'll see when you do download the application. A couple of things to note. If you're a corporation applying, you will have to apply as the topmost legal corporate entity. Subsidiary companies are not eligible to apply. The winning program, the Willing Philanthropic Effort, can be something that's run through a subsidiary, but the overall application will be conducted in the name of the topmost entity. Also, in order to have a great story to tell, it's helpful if the programs that you're nominating have existed for a certain amount of time. In the corporate category, you have to have had the program in place for at least 18 months before you apply, and you should plan to continue the program for at least 18 months after. This is so that when we have the winners up on stage, we're discussing programs that are still in motion. For the Nonprofit Award, it must be a 501c3 organization with an annual operating budget of or exceeding $500,000. In this case, the award is only open to organizations headquartered in the U.S., nonprofit organizations headquartered in the U.S. That is not a criteria of the corporate awards. The corporate awards are open to any company headquartered anywhere, and you do not need to be a member of CECP. The length of time the program should have existed for the nonprofit award is a little longer. Because you're talking about a partnership that's built up over time, the requirement is that it has been in play for 24 months. And then plan to continue for 18 months. And Courtney already alluded to the fact that there's a wonderful $25,000 cash donation that accompanies this award. So what I'd like to do now is find out a little bit more through a poll which award the people on today's webinar plan to apply for. So we're going to launch that poll now. You see the 3 choices up on your screen. Are you a company who's planning to nominate your own programs with revenues of $20 billion or more? That's the Chairman's Award. If you're a company with revenues under $20 billion and you're nominating your own program, that's the President's Award. And if you're a corporate and a nonprofit coming together to fill out an award jointly that the nonprofit will receive, that's the Director's Award. So I appreciate you all getting your voting in. We're going to close the poll in a minute. Terrific. Here are the results. So we've got some Chairman's Awards applicants, President's Awards applicant, and Nonprofit Director's Awards applicants. That's great. Well, I will be pointing out the differences between the applications and the similarities and taking you through in detail tips from the jury about how to complete each of these applications. On the next slide, I want to just review a little bit of what Courtney already highlighted about how the awards are judged. So CECP is very proud, as Courtney indicated, to bring together a selection committee that represents voices from the corporate, nonprofit, government, consulting sectors. Prior year's winners serve on the jury as kind of a nice tradition for us. I will say that one thing that all of these jurors have in common is that they are true champions of corporate philanthropy. They deeply understand the complexity of running these programs, and these are really your peers and advocates. I think that's going to come into play when we talk about the type of advice they have for applicants. Because they know these programs so well, you can go to a level of detail in telling your story that you know will really be appreciated by people who understand your work. The selection process is also something that we include as part of the application when you download it, so you'll be able to review that process when you download the application. But to give you a preview, CECP collects the applications as they come in. We distribute them to the jury. Each juror rates each question independently. We show you how many points each question is worth on the application. We combine the scores into a spreadsheet that shows what each juror has done and some of the averages and medians, and then that's a launching point for an in-person discussion among the jury to select the winning applications in each category. So it's very much a dynamic process based on the scoring, but informed by people sharing their ideas and inspirations from what you've been able to share through each of the questions. What I'd like to do now is show you a suggested timeline for the countdown to the deadline, which is November 16th, right before midnight East Coast time, when we hope to have all the applications in. This timeline is really just meant to reflect our experience in working with companies and kind of seeing how the different dynamics that take place in each company or nonprofit can affect how long it takes to get an award together. It's not meant to be intimidating. In terms of actual time typing up the award, it shouldn't take you too long to do it, but what this timeline reflects is that many companies have approval processes before submitting an application, and the most heartbreaking thing in the world is when a lot of work has been done on an application, but that excellent application is sitting on someone's desk for review and they're out sick or they're on vacation, so it's always good to put a little padding in. So what we've tried to do with this slide is just make some suggestions for how you might manage your time. Again, if it turns out that you don't follow this timeline closely, there's still plenty of time to put together an excellent application, but this just reflects you know, what a timeline might look like if you budget for approval processes internally. Particularly for those corporates and nonprofits coming together for the Director's Award, there because the application is being filled out across 2 institutions, there might be even a little bit more time that you want to build in. So how might you get started? Well, one thing you might do is download the applications if you haven't already, and do a little brainstorming about what program, if you have multiple programs, you'd like to nominate. Or think about which nonprofit that you'd like to encourage to apply, and just start to get the juices flowing on how you might begin to approach the award. Another initial step you might take is looking at the June 5th, 2012 date and making sure that if you're a corporate award applicant, that your CEO can be there on that day, or if you're a nonprofit, that the executive director of your institution can be there to win the award should your application be chosen. One thing I will say is that if you go to check the calendar of your senior leader and you find out that he or she has another commitment that day, don't be too deterred from applying. Our experience is that because the CEO must be there to accept the award and CECP will not accept a different representative from the firm, the honor of winning the award has sometimes persuaded these leaders to change their plans. So we'll leave it to your discretion, but we've had the experience in the past where a senior leader who had prior commitments was successfully able to move those commitments and able to be there to receive the award. In the next few weeks, you might start typing up your initial ideas for each of the questions. We recommend that you don't try to finalize and perfect your language too early on, because as you're getting familiar with the application and brainstorming, you might find that working in bullet points allows you to move ideas around a little bit more easily, but this will at least allow you to start to get your initial thinking down on paper and build that with your teammates. As we head into the middle of October, finalizing the language is kind of a good place to be, and you might start to initiate the internal review process, maybe giving people a heads up as to when you're going to share a draft with them so that they can plan their time. We've given you a kind of a fake deadline of November 7th to shoot for, so that if for some reason you miss it, there's still plenty of time before the real deadline. You know, if you aim for November 7th, you should have no trouble hitting November 16th. Again, this is meant to be a very kind of unscientific timeline, but helpful for those who haven't applied before. What I'd like to do now is get into specific advice on how to approach the application. As I mentioned when I was talking about the timeline, it's very, very helpful to, as a first step, just read the entire application all the way through before choosing a program. When you hear Excellence Awards in Corporate Philanthropy, a program might immediately leap to mind, but when you get into the application and see some of the things that the application is asking for, you might realize that another program would be a fantastic candidate. So really take the time to read what's asked of you in the application and how the points are awarded before you commit yourself to a program. I will say that specific details are really going to strengthen the story. So as you're thinking about which program to nominate or which nonprofit partner to nominate, to the extent that you can provide really vivid details about who, what, when, where, and how, that's going to really show up in a powerful way for the jury. So if you've got a lot of kind of concrete storytelling to do for one program and another is more early stage or not as fully developed, I would encourage you to think seriously about sharing the story of a program where you have a lot of specific details, particularly around the pillars of excellence that I will go through in detail later in the webinar. When in doubt, it might be the case that the program that existed a little bit longer might have a richer story to tell just because you have more experience to draw from, perhaps some more lessons learned, perhaps some more outcome measures. So if you're really on the fence, it might not be global versus domestic or anything like that. It might just be, where do you have the richer story? For companies, sometimes they ask us, well, what do you recommend? Should I nominate myself or should I nominate a nonprofit partner? For corporate applications, I think it's important to realize that all of the pillars of excellence that I'll go through momentarily have the same point value. So CEO leadership and innovation and dedication to measurement and partnership all have equal weighting in the corporate application. The Director's Award application for corporates and nonprofits does put the emphasis on partnership. That might help you decide whether to nominate yourself or whether to nominate a nonprofit partner. It might also, as a corporation, help you decide whether to nominate yourself or a nonprofit partner based on the way you've structured your philanthropy. If you have a really rich and deep relationship with a nonprofit that's really in line with your company's overall philanthropic strategy, that might be an excellent candidate to nominate for the Director's Award because you're really explaining a deep and powerful relationship which is at the heart of that award. If, by contrast, you fund many nonprofit partners and each of them helps you achieve a different part of your philanthropic mission, then it might make more sense for you to self-nominate so you can tell the story of your grant making across all of those different nonprofits rather than the Director's Award, which focuses on a single relationship between a company and a nonprofit. When you're choosing which nonprofit to nominate, really think about relationships where coming together makes you more than the sum of your parts. Is this truly a partnership that's special in some way? And if you really can't decide, one last way to maybe think about how you would choose would be to delve into the practicalities. Is your CEO available that day, or is the executive director of the nonprofit for the Director's Award available that day? How long has the program existed, and how long has the partnership existed? So next, I want to get into some general tips for actually filling in the award itself. These tips are based on feedback that we've gotten from the selection committee over the years. Again, CECP doesn't vote on the winners, but we're present in the room and we're taking notes and interviewing the jurors afterwards in terms of what makes a powerful application. And so everything from this point in the webinar forward is really based on what we've heard from them. So the very first thing is to keep the writing style fresh, vivid, and clear. If you have fun writing your application, it's going to be much more enjoyable for the selection committee to read. And as I said earlier with the timeline, rough out your ideas with bullet points first. Don't get too attached to language because there are word counts associated with each question. And you're going to want to get as much kind of detail in your response as possible, perhaps at the expense of language that you might grow attached to. So try not to get attached to specific language too early. Another piece of advice from the jury is that really, if you think about it at a very high level, some fantastic programs sound the same when they're explained in generalities. And we've got some wording here from past applications that could perhaps be improved upon in terms of the level of specificity. So an example of less successful wording would be, we focus our giving where we can have an impact. Well, a question the selection committee might have is, well, where do you focus and what's the rationale? Why did you choose to give where you did and where exactly are you giving? Another example might be, we partner with innovative organizations that address critical challenges in the communities in which we live and work. The selection committee might have the natural follow-up question, well, what makes that partnership different from other corporate nonprofit partnerships? So I don't want to give the wrong impression. It's totally fine to kind of begin your answers with some broad statements, but because of the tight word counts, you're going to pretty quickly want to get into the details. More tips from the jury. Be sure not to overlook the context and the basics. Sometimes you and your team can be so close to the program that you can forget that someone who's not as close to it might not understand the specific challenges of your industry or the specific challenges associated with that funding area or that target population. So remember to not overlook the simple things. A formula you might use as you craft your responses to make sure that you've set the context. Which population are you talking about? Why did you target them? Then the actions you took. What did the grant making or partnership fund? Where? When did this happen? And the results. What did you achieve and how do you know that you achieved that? Be sure that you've got some aspects of your context, action, and results in your answers to make sure that you haven't overlooked something that the jury might really appreciate learning because they're not as close to your programs as you are. Some examples of successful language in setting that context would be, launching this program in 2 countries simultaneously was complicated by A, B, and C. Or for oil companies, it's always important to A, B, and C. Again, just a reminder that there could be some unique things that are worth pointing out to the jury in your response. Another tip is that if you feel like you're repeating yourself or certain details of your program again and again in different parts of the application, it's time to take a pause and relook at the different criteria. We have tried to craft an application that allows you to really tell different aspects of your story in only one place. So if you feel like there's certain things that are coming up again and again, maybe have someone else from your organization take a look, give you feedback, see if they can clarify what's being asked for in each section, and if it's really feeling hard to discern that, feel free to pick up the phone and call us here at CECP, and maybe we can work with you to better clarify the intent of each question. But it won't be helpful if you're using the same elements or stories about your program in multiple places in the application. Each question should be the opportunity to get new points, and that's going to require new information. Another tip from the jury is to look for clarity, jargon, and typos. Perhaps by having a second set of eyes read your application over for you, especially if this is an application that multiple hands are working on and there are multiple edits and revisions. Having one last final reader give it a careful look with a printed copy can really help ensure that you're putting your best foot forward, as Courtney said, when the jury reads your story. One last tip here is that I've alluded to the different word counts. You'll see them clearly marked in the applications. those are meant to be generous. So don't feel like if you've answered the question in fewer words, you need to keep typing or keep sharing other details. We tried to make it so that you had ample room to tell your story, giving you some padding. You're welcome to write up to the word limit. If you write over the word limit, we're going to send your application back to you and ask you to shorten it. And if you write less than the word limit, you should feel confident that you've completed that section of the application successfully. Don't be made fearful that there's more that you could have done because we padded it intentionally. So now I would like to get into the specific questions that each application asks. Up front in the corporate application, one of the things that we ask for is a summary of the financial data for your firm and the scope of your philanthropy in terms of the dollar value of your giving, both cash and non-cash, as well as your employee volunteer hours. You will notice that there are no points associated with this part of the application, but it is very important background and context for helping the selection committee understand the scope of your overall philanthropic efforts, but again, there are no points. For those of you who are members of CECP and have taken part in our annual corporate giving standard survey, if you've filled out that survey, chances are we have this data for you already. You're welcome to choose the top box that's indicated there, and CECP will use the surveys you've given to us in the past and fill this information in for you. If anything is missing, we will come back and ask you for it. We will not, however, give you a chance to review it. We'll assume that all the reviews and approvals took place when you submitted your data to the survey in the first place. If you're not a CECP member, then we ask that you check the second box and provide this information yourself, and you'll see some specific guidance on how to format the numbers so that it's easy for the jury to read in a way that's consistent with all the other applications that are being submitted. Also for the corporate award, the very first question with a point value asks you to describe your company's overall corporate philanthropy strategy. Later in the application, we're going to ask you to dive into a specific initiative that you'd like to discuss in detail. But for this question, what we're looking for is the overall strategy of the company. So I've got an example here of some strong words for the overall strategy, which is our philanthropic mission is to help reduce health disparities by strengthening community-based healthcare worker capacity. We've got community-based supported initiatives, mobilizing communities in fighting disease. I'm on slide 17 of the presentation now. So what we're looking for here is a sense of the overall philosophy. I will share one caution from the jury, which is that it's easy to be too high level and it's easy to be too low level with this question. So if you were to use the space for this question to get into the details of your overall corporate value system and history and CSR and sustainability efforts, that might be aiming too high, because what this application question is looking for is your philanthropy strategy. However, if you were to go the other direction up front and dive into the specifics of a very specific signature initiative, you'll be missing the intent of the question, which is to really understand how your specific programs all hang together under an overarching strategy. Next, though, we're going to ask you to describe a specific program, and that's what we're going to focus on for the rest of the application. So we're moving from the philanthropy strategy to a description of a specific program. Less successful examples of how you might describe your program are, again, in working with generalities. That gets back to the tips that we had earlier. So if the application were to state, our goal is to help create thriving communities where we do business, well, there's another example of an opportunity to really take your explanation deeper so that a vivid picture is painted in the mind of the jury. The jury is going to want to see more of a rich explanation of exactly what, when, and how you're doing and what results you've achieved. After the philanthropy strategy has been explained for the corporates and the program has been explained both in the corporate award and in the director's award, then we get into CECP's 4 pillars of excellence. And the rest of the points for the applications are allocated toward these 4 pillars of excellence. The pillars are CEO leadership. Is the CEO actively and effectively involved in the success of the company's community investment programs? Innovation. Does the nominated program stretch beyond traditional approaches and solutions in the pursuit of exceptional results for communities in the company? Next is dedication to measurement. Does the company and its partners demonstrate a strong commitment to accountability, benchmarking, and continuous improvement throughout the nominated program's life cycle? And lastly, partnership. And again, this is what's emphasized with regard to points in the Director's Award, which is, does collaboration with partners based on mutual interest and complementary assets allow the nominated program to exceed the results that the applying company could otherwise achieve, whether alone or with partners? We include the definitions of these 4 pillars of excellence in the awards. I will say that the language is a little bit different from the Director's Award because you've got a joint award process there as opposed to a corporate nominating themselves, but you get the spirit behind each of the 4 pillars that are important to CECP and the jury. What I'm going to do now is, over the course of a couple slides, take you through each one of these in turn. So the very first one is CEO leadership. On the corporate award, the exact question being asked is, how does the company's CEO exhibit leadership in the company's community investment programs? In the Director's Award, which is here labeled kind of nonprofit, the question is, how do the corporation's CEO and the nonprofit's executive leader play a role or roles in the success of this program? For the corporate award, you obviously are nominating yourself, and you're going to answer this on behalf of your corporate CEO. For the nonprofit, there are actually 2 spaces to enter a response, one for the corporate nominator and one for the nonprofit nominee. A couple of things to consider as you describe CEO leadership. What is the CEO or executive director's role in setting the strategy and supporting the success of the program? What recent actions have they taken, either internally or externally, and what result have those actions had? And for the corporate awards, really we're putting the emphasis on the CEO, but if you have an amazing story to tell about what other senior leaders in the company have done, you're welcome to include those details, but you will want to make sure that CEO leadership is highlighted, as CEO membership is a distinguishing factor of CECP, and we really are interested in learning the CEO story, but if you'd like to supplement with a story about other senior leaders, you're welcome to do so. Let's now look at some strong examples of how you might complete this question and some less successful examples. What's nice about the first 2 examples is that they're very active. You've got a CEO who, when they do an international business trip, is setting time out of their business schedule to go meet with some of the program beneficiaries. In the second example, you've got a story of a CEO who's broken with how board meeting time was used in the past to carve out a moment to discuss the philanthropy program. And what's nice about this answer is that the applicant took the time to give us some context. If they had stopped the answer halfway and said, our CEO chose to present details to the board, that's a strong answer. But letting us know that there was an aspect of leadership here where this is a break from tradition is an even stronger answer. As we get to the bottom of the slide, less successful examples, you can see that the verbs here are a little bit more passive. Our CEO encourages us to be vigilant. You might want to put a little bit more color about what specific actions he or she takes to encourage you. What does encouraging really look like? Are they sending memos? Are they making speeches? Are they presenting at conferences? Are they writing op-eds? What does it look like for the CEO to encourage? And when the executive team approves the foundation budget in the second example, you might want to say kind of what some of the steps were and how involved they were in the process leading up to approval. I'd like to move now to the next criteria, which is innovation. Again, this is about stretching beyond traditional approaches in the pursuit of exceptional results. For the corporate award and the nonprofit award, the question that you're trying to answer is really simple, which is just what makes this program innovative. A couple of things to consider as you tackle the question of innovation. One is really what's distinguishing your program from others designed to address the same or similar issues. Chances are, if you've got your programs focused on an area like illiteracy or hunger or domestic abuse or STEM education, you're pretty well versed in what other programs in that space look like. So you're in an excellent position to draw a contrast with other programs that you've seen active in the field to really tell the jury what you think makes your program worthy of showcasing in front of your peers. Another aspect to innovation might be how your company's unique resources and expertise contribute to the program's success. So an aspect of innovation can be your corporate fingerprint or your nonprofit's fingerprint on the program itself. There might be something really unique there where you've leveraged an asset in a way that hadn't been done before, and that's certainly worth sharing. Another aspect of innovation could be about risk. Is there anything that you did with this program that could be considered risk-taking, and why did you decide to take those risks, and how did you minimize the potential consequences of those risks? Have you done anything to make it scalable, and do you have plans for future innovation? I will say that if you're going to share plans for future innovation, you should be able to reassure the jury in the text that you can be reasonably assured those plans will materialize. So being able to talk about the future but substantiate it in some way with regard to your seriousness would be useful if you're going to talk about something that hasn't happened yet. Let's turn now to some specific examples from past applications that represent strong answers and answers that were less successful. So in the first example, we've got a company who was working on a program with a host government, and the structure of the program was to insist that the host country actually contribute half of the cost of the program. Maybe this nominating company considers that a risk. Maybe that's different from how programs of this type have been structured before. There seems to be the start of a great innovation answer here because that might be kind of more of an unusual structure. In the second example, and I'm on slide 22, our program provides a traditionally underserved population with access to first-rate business training. Well, this seems like the start of an answer where perhaps the company or nonprofit has flipped an assumption on its head, that there's a population that hasn't been given access to really high-quality business training in the past, but they decided that that was appropriate, and they want to tell the story of how they made that decision and rolled the program out. A less successful example might be at the bottom there, by making it a company policy, we ensured the sustainability of these investments. Well, as everybody in a large institution knows, just because something's a policy doesn't mean that the institution has mobilized around it. So if you're going to start talking about the policies you've set, you might also want to explain how those policies are brought to life and supplement the policy with some examples of what that policy looks like in action and evidence that it's actually a policy that is alive and robust within your firm. The next criteria I'd like to go to is dedication to measurement. Again, this is about how do you quantify the effect that your program is having. The question both for the corporate application and nonprofit application is, what is the role of measurement in the fulfillment of your program's strategy? I will say this is a tough question, and the nice thing about our selection committee is that, again, this is a jury that really appreciates the complexity of measuring social change and measuring business benefits. And so we encourage you to do your best with this question. Obviously, it's important to the application, but realize that the jury of your peers recognizes that it's difficult often to prove your results. So what you're going to want to include in your answer is perhaps how measurement informed your initial program design, what metrics you use to evaluate the program, and why you chose those metrics. Of all the metrics you could have chosen, why did you choose to track the ones that you did? It's going to be important when we're asking about measurement to put some numbers in there. I'll get to this in the next slide that has examples of stronger and weaker language, but if your measurement story is about increasing or raising or changing or widening, those are exciting verbs, but they don't give the jury a sense of the true magnitude. You're going to want to say increasing from one number to another number and be specific about what those numbers are so that the jury can have a clear sense of your ambitions and that they know that you're kind of tracking the success of what you're doing very rigorously over time. Another aspect of this question might be how you've learned from the measurement that you've done. We often see in applications that measurement allows people to understand how the program can be improved over time. And so if you've had one of those learnings as a result of the survey that you did or data that you collect, you might want to share that learning with the jury. Don't be fearful of sharing progress and learning with the jury. Again, these are peers who understand the challenges. Let's look at stronger and weaker examples of language from actual applications. So the first example, you'll see that I have placeholders here where real numbers would go. Our cause marketing gift certificate campaign converted this number of donors with this number returning to support this many recipients nationwide. I think that commitment to including numbers in the program is really helpful for the jury in assessing the program. The next example, we track both the implementation results as well as changes in employees' knowledge, attitudes, and practices. Here you've kind of set up a strong answer where you're going to tell us more about why you chose to track the results, but also why the input of employees was helpful. That's not a complete answer, but perhaps lays some important context for the jury in understanding the quantitative numbers that are going to come later. Less successful examples, and here some of these might surprise you, and I'll talk you through them. A less successful example, 96% of participants gave the program a high satisfaction rating. Well, how might that answer be improved? What's not clear here is contextualizing that satisfaction rating. Is 96% a good result? It sure sounds like a good result, but in the absence of comparing it to surveys in the past or other programs, it's hard for the jury to know for sure what that satisfaction rating means. And what is satisfaction? There are a lot of ways to achieve satisfaction, but does satisfaction relate to the mission and ambitions of the program itself, or is it just kind of a general level of kind of contentment with your program, but maybe there's an opportunity to improve more? So while that might sound like a strong quantitative example, I think there are ways that it could be made stronger that give the jury a little bit more color as to what you're tracking and what's important to you. The next set of text, we regularly receive emails from students and faculty about the impact of our program. You've alluded to kind of a really nice aspect of the program when you've written something like this, which is that people spontaneously feel like sharing the positive experience with the program with you. It's okay to include details like that, but again, given short word counts, you're going to want to get into something a little bit more specific so the jury has a sense of what those students and faculty thought the impact was and how it changed their lives and how representative that feedback is of the larger population. And that very last example, this is one of those answers where you're talking about raising the bar, but you're not really saying from what to what. So really saying where you started and where you are now and where you hope to be is going to be important to a application question about measurement. Lastly, we've got partnership. Again, this is where the most points are given for the Director's Award. And this is about collaboration based on mutual interests that allow you to be more than the sum of your parts. Really, if you think about it, what's going to happen at the award ceremony is we're going to bring a nonprofit representative to the stage along with their nonprofit nominator and really showcase the way that these organizations work together. So for that recognition, you're going to really want to show the depth and strength of the relationship that you had. The exact question that you're answering is, how has partnership enabled this program to generate results beyond what you could have otherwise achieved? Some things to consider as you craft your response. Why did you choose each other as partners in the first place? Of all of the companies and all of the nonprofits, why did you select the partnerships that you did? What about them made them special? How do your strengths and weaknesses complement one another? And then get into the details a little bit of how the partnership actually functions. Beyond providing economic resources, how else do you interact? What does the relationship look like? How do you stay in touch and check progress and decide when to course correct? What do those communications look like? Not literally, but kind of how do you interact? Giving the jury a flavor for what the living, breathing partnership looks like. If the partnership has changed and evolved over time, you might want to mention that. And then again, don't be afraid to talk about lessons learned in this application. This is not a marketing piece for your program. This is telling the story of the way that complex partnerships function. And there might have been some learnings in there that overall resulted in better results for the community, the nonprofit, and the company. And if there's a great learning in there, I think that's worth sharing with the jury. Certainly they've responded positively when applicants have done that in the past. You don't have to include that, but know that that type of detail is assessed with some amount of appreciation by a jury who's been in your shoes before. We've got some examples here taken from applications of different language that you might use. The first one talks about the mechanics of the partnership. These nonprofits and companies have a weekly teleconference, and they're talking about what they discuss in the teleconference. The next example of an answer is showing the complementary assets. What does the corporation contribute, and what does the nonprofit contribute, and what does the blending of those assets allow you to achieve? Less successful examples, again, fall in that category of being a little bit high level, a little bit abstract, where you just talk about the fact that you're a large company and you've got a high profile, and maybe that encourages other companies to give to that nonprofit. But that's true of a lot of corporate nonprofit relationships. So you're going to want to give more examples about what makes it unique. Certainly a deep connection with a nonprofit partner does, in the second example, demonstrate that you're a good corporate citizen. But again, this is really about showcasing how institutions have come together to be more than the sum of your parts, so you're going to want to get to another level of detail there. So that takes us through the 4 pillars of excellence: CEO leadership and innovation, dedication to measurement and partnership. Everything that I've given you as examples of what to consider in your application is actually included in the application itself as a reminder. And we encourage you to share the specifics in a rich, vivid way that really allows the jury to understand what your programs look like in action. So now we'd like to turn it over to your questions, and I'll invite Courtney Murphy to lead us in that.
Absolutely. Well, Margaret, thank you so much. Margaret has such a great perspective, having overseen this Excellence Awards program for several years and worked very closely with our selection committee. So we hope that all of these tips about our standards of excellence are helpful to you all. We encourage you now to use these last few minutes to send us your questions. There is the questions area in your toolbar on the right, and we encourage you to email us your questions so that we can address any of those that you have here. I'll just address a couple of the questions which have come in. One of which is, will the presentation be sent electronically? We will send the presentation in our follow-up email. And also, as mentioned previously, this webinar is being recorded, and we will shortly post that to our website as well, to the page that's designated for the Excellence Awards webinar, where you found the registration link initially. Another question is, do you need to be a CECP member to apply? And you need not be a CECP member. Both members and non-members are invited to apply for the Corporate Excellence Awards. As Margaret indicated, if you are a CECP member, you can use your financial data from the Corporate Giving Standards Survey. But if you're not a member, you could complete that yourself. Another question is there a fee to apply? And the answer is no. There's no fee to apply for the Excellence Awards in Corporate Philanthropy. So the application does not come with any financial requirement on behalf of the applying company or nonprofit. Margaret, I'll address this question to you. Does an entry get more weight if you include news or videos? The application itself is limited to what you can describe for the jury in the application itself. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the question correctly. So the first part of my answer will be that it's not part of the jury selection process to consider extra materials. So if you wanted to share a video or news stories, you would have to reference those in the typed responses on the application itself. You're not able to submit supplementary materials. We really want to create a level playing field for all applicants, and so the jury will only be considering what's typed up in your response. There is not the opportunity to submit additional opportunities. That said, if your program has benefited from nice media attention, that might be something that you want to include as part of your answer by referencing it, but it's not possible to actually include the media coverage or to include the videos as part of your application. Terrific. And on a related note, Margaret, one of our attendees asked about our final question. We have a closing thoughts question, which does not have any point value. Is that a required question? Or?
No, it's not a required question. As we crafted this application, clearly the 4 pillars of excellence are heavily emphasized with point values in this application, but we realized that in telling the story of your CEO's leadership, innovation, dedication to measurement, and partnership, there might be a really important detail that didn't naturally fit into one of those buckets. So if there's something that you thought was really important for the selection committee to know, you're welcome to include that extra detail in the closing thoughts, but you'll see again that there are no points associated with that, so you should not feel compelled to use that word count to mention anything. The jury will be completely neutral as to whether, in terms of points, you've got an answer there or not. It really is just meant to acknowledge that if there's something about your program that you feel really didn't fit into one of the other buckets, it gives you a chance to do so.
Terrific. And one other question, someone had asked whether examples of winning applications were available. The actual actual applications themselves are not available. However, on our website, as we mentioned previously, we have robust descriptions of past winning programs, as well as the highlights videos that show the impact of those programs. And again, the area of our website that you can go to find that would be to go to events on the top navigation of corporatephilanthropy.org. And then on the left-hand navigation, once you get to events, there's a section for Excellence Awards. And under that section, you'll find the winning programs, a full list of all past winners, with links to more information about those, as well as the link to our selection committee, the applications, videos, photos, and all the other resources that you need. Well, I think that this concludes our webinar today. We appreciate your time and hope that you've felt encouraged to apply. It's really a terrific opportunity to celebrate and be recognized for your programs and to share your best practices with others. Don't forget those resources we've mentioned on CECP's website, and feel free to reach out to us directly if you have any follow-up questions after this webinar. You can email info@corporatephilanthropy.org or call us at 212-825-1000. And we ask you to mark your calendar for November 16th, the deadline for the applications, and to craft your work plan so you have enough time for this to be a constructive and positive experience for you, your colleagues, and your nonprofit partners. Thanks again for listening today and for actively participating on this webinar. When you exit the webinar today, there will be a very short survey which we encourage you to complete in order to help us in bettering these experiences. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and again, feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Thank you so much.